I'm delighted to have Kara Tolliver, who is an attorney with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and she is, in fact, the attorney on a really aggravating and infuriating case based in Wisconsin. It's the case of an employee, Spencer Wimmer, at Generac, who was fired because he refused to use transgender pronouns in the workplace. Kara, welcome to the show. I thought that was illegal to fire someone. Number one, based on, civil rights law, but number two, based on, Trump's declarations about DEI.
Yeah, Vicki, as we allege in our complaint, that we think that this whole situation, which started initially as just a conversation with a supervisor, just discussing Christian beliefs and how his beliefs prevented Spencer from using employees' preferred names and pronouns when these terms don't align with an individual's biological sex, and just simply talking with a supervisor to seek some clarity and assurance with respect to religious beliefs and the company's expectations on the matter. How a conversation like that turns into a report to HR followed by reprimanding, repeated threats to terminate and formal write-ups. The situation was pretty inappropriate, displays a lot of bias and hostility towards Spencer's religious beliefs. And all of these actions, from the company's discipline, harassment, denial of the reasonable accommodation, which was sought in this case, which was simply just to avoid using any preferred names and pronouns altogether, and then ultimately the termination event as well. All of these things constitute religious discrimination under Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and that's why Will has filed a complaint with the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission as the first step in securing for Spencer the right to be free from religious discrimination in the workplace.
I want to say this straight up. Had I known any of this about the Generac company, I would have bought a different generator. Honestly, I wish I could. I do. It was very expensive, and I wish I could take back all of the thousands of dollars I spent on that from this company, because this ticks me off. So you're telling me Mr. Wimmer never even confronted someone who demanded to use alt pronouns. He was just having a conversation about the issue of pronouns. And next he knows, he's written up, and there's no accommodation for his religious beliefs. By the way, it is a biblically held belief that he has. It's real. I hold the same belief that there are two genders, that there are, based on biological sex. So, I mean, but he didn't confront anyone. He didn't have a spat with anyone. This was just kind of a conversation that was going on that may or may never have happened, but for, I don't know, maybe they accidentally he accidentally saw something in the news or something like that.
Yeah, this was an attempt. Generac has a pretty, I don't know, for lack of better terms, they have a lot of commitment to DEI, as we discuss in our complaint, as we allege in our complaint. And it was simply a conversation against that context. And given increasing claims of gender identity changes within the company, it was a conversation to just seek a little bit of clarity and just try to understand what the company's expectations were and assurance with respect to Spencer's beliefs in this case. And mind you, there had been a number of claims, as I mentioned, of gender identity changes in the company already. That he had no problems. He had already been engaging his approach of just sort of avoiding the issue altogether and not using preferred names and pronouns. It's not really necessary that you name somebody by pronoun in most sentences, and he would have been getting by just fine. And the whole thing kind of just came about as a simple conversation to just gain a little bit of clarity and on expectations, and to just, sort of kind of a proactive approach, if you will. And then it turns out into this thing that it really never had to be. This was somebody who was
they didn't
a
like
model
his
employee otherwise.
So he's a going on. He had no discipline. He didn't have any write-ups or anything like that.
Right. Nobody had complained. Had received glowing performance reviews for almost the last 5 years. I think his 5-year mark with the company would have been up in the next month here. Thought he had a long-term career with the company, and things just kind of went south as a result of this conversation. So it's very unfortunate because Title VII has been around for a really long time, and it requires employers like Generac to reasonably accommodate sincerely held religious beliefs and practices. And the only defense that a company would have to not doing something like this is if they can demonstrate that the burden of granting such an accommodation would result in substantially increased cost to the business. So,
it wouldn't increase cost to the business at all, right? Zero cost in letting Spencer,
right?
Yeah. So zero cost in letting Spencer just keep doing what he was doing, which was like, all right, well, that's your thing. I'm just not going to play along. I'm not going to be in the game. I'm just going to avoid participating in the game. But he engaged these employees. He never had any conflict with these employees. Everything was going along fine. And but for a supervisor finding out that he was a sincere Christian and held these beliefs, nobody would have said anything except Spencer Wimmer is a great employee. And so really, if it's after a conversation and suddenly he's harassed, how was he harassed at work?
Well, I think it was just a continuation of the process. So following the initial conversation, he's reported to HR, reprimanded pursuant to that conversation, threatened through formal, written up disciplinary action, then goes to seek a formal accommodation request for a religious exemption in this case, and is shut down through that process. He seeks clarity. Even after being denied the religious accommodation, the actual denial letter says something to the effect of, we understand that you have this belief. However, it's contrary to law and constitutes gender harassment. It's what it says, that his belief.
Do they not have lawyers who
gender harassment?
Do they not have lawyers who work at Generac? Was that just some, some human resource person popping off? Because that is just dumb.
Yeah, it wasn't. It doesn't seem like a proper application of the law at all. It is just asserting that this belief violates another law. With nothing has happened here, no complaints have happened. I think the whole thing was unnecessary and inappropriate, and it's never even had to come about whatsoever. So
the only reason, the only group violating the law here, the only people violating the law here are Generac. Did he get a performance improvement plan?
No, it was a situation where. So what actually happened? So after all of this and the formal denial came, he actually sought he sought them out again to try and re-engage. He thought there had been some misunderstanding because he wasn't, the company also in this letter had said this was misgendering. He's like, no, I'm not misgendering anybody. I'm not engaging this at all. I'm not using these. And so from that, it went on and just continuously shut down. And in that kind of environment where you've been threatened a bunch of times with termination, and your supervisor has already reported you once, and you have a notice of discipline telling you that if you don't use these pronouns, if you don't use these names, if you don't term individuals by anything but their preferred names and pronouns, we're going to see you back here for discipline. That's what these repeat notices told him. So he kind of doesn't know what to say, right? He can't say anything without violating his beliefs, that his core beliefs.
It sounds like to me, Kara, it sounds to me like they're trying to force him to say it. Now he's saying, hey, I've just been avoiding it. Everything's been fine. And that and I'm just using finger quotes here. He didn't get a performance improvement plan, because what do you do except say violate your religious beliefs? That's the only thing you can say. It's like they want to force this guy to bend the knee. They want to, in order for him to keep his job, he's got to call a man Ms. or something like that. In order to keep his job, he has to actively violate his religious beliefs in their presence so that they can check boxes saying Spencer's violating his religious beliefs because we don't like him.
Right. So you can understand then, like, why an employee would not want to continue subjecting themselves to this kind of environment anymore. So what Spencer ultimately did was he gave his notice to resign. Then he started, reading a little bit, doing some research, thinking like, hey, I might have some rights here. So he talked with his supervisor and tried to see if he could. It was like a 2-week notice period. So then what they did is say, no, we do not accept your, we do not accept you rescinding your notice, and here's what we're going to do is actually fire you right now. Well, they were into like day 2 of the 2-week period, the 2-week window that he had previously provided. So they wouldn't have let him finish out like the 2 weeks, that they just terminated him on the spot. Like, following all of this, I mean, it's not a good look. It's hostile. Like
Generac wants everybody to know that they think that biblical Christianity is stupid and is not worthy of respect. They want everybody to know they don't respect civil rights law. They don't respect the Constitution. They want everyone to know not only do they not respect it, they're openly hostile to that. So everyone needs to take note of this, by the way. But what are you seeking in terms of relief from Mr. Wimmer here?
Right. So at this point, so we filed a Title VII complaint, alleging all of this. And, that's sort of the first step here. These types of anti-discrimination claims usually have to start with the EEOC. And it's sort of a requirement to serve as a mechanism to maybe permit possible resolution of claims without the need for a lawsuit. So, I mean, there's some, potential here for, Generac to maybe come to the table, like look at the allegations in this complaint, verify them and say, like maybe this didn't go the way that it should have in compliance with law. Okay, so like if they do that, maybe there's a way to resolve, maybe not. If that process is unsuccessful for whatever reason, we can definitely file a lawsuit.
All right. So it's a complaint. It's not yet a lawsuit. My apologies. It's not yet a lawsuit. It's a complaint. It's now the ball is in Generac's court. But my gosh, if they don't just grovel in an apology to this, then I hope people take notice of this, and I hope you sue their pants off. I appreciate the time, Kara. Thank you so much for jumping on today. Good to have you. Kara Tolliver, Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty.